You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
Well, Hard Knock Knockers, this is a great interview with the comedian who owns the brand Bogan. He's, of course, the legendary Chris Franklin. Now, for the younger audience members who don't immediately recognise that name, Chris is not only a seasoned stand-up comedian that's known throughout Australia, but he's also a Raw comedy winner. But perhaps most impressive is that he's also a best-selling music artist. Now, his song Bloke stayed on top of the charts for months and even ended up as the number 12 top single for the year 2000, beating Bon Jovi and Ricky Martin. That says a lot. And you'd think that this success would go to this man's head, but as you'll hear, Chris Franklin is a very down-to-earth, bloke. And what's more, he's one of our guest comedian teachers and headliners at the May 21 to 25 School of Hard Knock Knocks stand-up comedy course. So, if you like what you hear and want to get some personal one-on-one coaching from a stand-up comedy legend, then book your seat today. Actually, book it now. Press pause, book your ticket, and that way you get your early bird ticket price. And then come back and listen to this very insightful interview with the king of bogans and great bloke, the stand-up comedy legend himself, Mr. Chris Franklin. Chris Franklin, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Maury. How are you going?
I'm very good. Now, Chris, I believe you're up north from Tasmania, where you reside. You're in Sydney.
I am indeed. I'm sitting on a veranda of a friend's house in Manly. I've got a week's worth of shows here in Sydney and then a week's worth of shows in Brisbane before I get home.
Ah, very good. And I think it's always warmer anywhere in the world other than Tasmania. So is that a good place to be in winter?
I love the cold, actually, so I'm enjoying living in Tassie. I grew up on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, so it's sort of the last bit of the mainland before you get down into the cold weather of Tassie, so I'm a little bit used to it.
Oh, right. I guess the bogan beanie gets a bit sticky, doesn't it, in the tropical heat?
Mine's a bit thicker than most. It's a balaclava.
In case you want to do some shopping, I guess. All right, yes, excellent. All right, we've warmed up a little bit. Interesting, Mornington Peninsula. I did not know that because the research that I did on you, Chris, is that you grew up on Manus Island.
I lived on Manus Island from ages 3 to 5. That was because my father was in the Navy. He did 20 years in the Navy, and at that age of my life, New Guinea was still a territory of Australia. Yeah. So there was a naval base, I'm assuming exactly the same piece of land that is now the detention centre.
You've obviously followed your father's footsteps because you were also in the Navy as well.
That's correct. He was a cook in the Navy, and I went on to be a cook in the Navy as well.
Amazing. This is not a Navy recruitment podcast. It is a comedy podcast. But did the Navy encourage you to get into comedy?
I think it was my parents long before I even realised that I was going to be a comedian. As a child growing up, after Dad was in the Navy, he spent a fair bit of time in the Merchant Navy, which meant he was away for a fair bit of time. In those times where he was away, my mother used to allow me to stay up late on a school night and watch Monty Python TV shows and things like that. And when Dad was home, we'd be down in the back shed listening to old Col Elliott tapes. Okay. Was that on the Mornington Peninsula or was that elsewhere? Yes, it was. When Dad finished his 20 years in the Navy, he was at HMAS Service, which is near Crib Point, near Hastings, down that way. And that's right. Yeah, so when he retired from the Navy, they bought a house there in Crib Point. I was just starting primary school and did all my schooling and growing up down that way. Fantastic. Tell us how you got into comedy then. What was aside from obviously getting inspired by Monty Python, what made you decide, yep, I'm going to give this a crack? I never really decided that, Murray. It was a long journey, really. Whilst in the Navy, they have, when you're at sea, a relaxing night called the ship's concert, and each department, e.g. the cooks, the engineers, etc., would submit a show, like a footy club players review, I guess. And because I'd listened to so much Col Elliott with Dad, I actually did a stand-up routine, which was word for word Col Elliott off one of the tape. That was received quite well. Many years later, let's fast forward quite a few years to 1997, I bumped into a comedian in a pub in Melbourne, a fellow called Pommy Johnson. Right. Pommy had been on Hey Hey a Saturday, and I'd seen him on there, so I was drunk in the pub and just got in his ear and said, here's a joke, and here's a joke, and here's a song I sing, and things like that. He played guitar on stage, so invited me around to write a song with him, which ended up being the Bloke song. He came up with a suggestion. I wrote 2 versions of the song. He chose one to do when he was on stage. He eventually encouraged me to get on stage myself, and I asked him if I could use the other version, which was the one that ended up being Bloke.
And that song that you're talking about, just the other song, actually got to number 12 in top-selling singles in 2000. And you beat Ricky Martin's She Bangs, which I was quite amazed, because that's one of the most sort of memorable songs around, and you were even more memorable that year.
That's because Ricky can't sing.
Have you said that to his face?
No, and I wouldn't. Coming from me who can't sing or play a note.
Right. Well, you do a pretty good job. Did they do auto-tune?
Auto-tune?
When you were recording?
No, that's entirely me. Some of the follow-up singles that didn't work for me, we tried auto-tune on.
They didn't work because the whole piss take of the bogan had already been done? Or
I think they didn't work because the radio stations worked out that I couldn't actually sing.
Ah, there you go. Well, you sound pretty good when you're doing comedy acts, but I guess we're not as judgmental to your singing as we are to your comedy, I guess, when you're standing up on stage.
The Australians are very forgiving, I think.
Yeah, if you look at the top songs that year in 2000, there's a lot of them I can't even recall. But I do. You even beat Bon Jovi, "It's My Life" again, which is I think they play it at grand finals.
It was quite a surreal period in my life that time. When the song was first released, it debuted at number 3 on the national charts, which was amazing. And the following week, it knocked off NSYNC's "Bye Bye Bye" to get to number 1. Stayed there for 3 weeks at number 1, and then Madonna brought out that horrible version of American Pie, but just because it was Madonna and American Pie, it went straight to number 1 for 1 week before everyone realised that wasn't a very good song.
Yep.
But, Bloke ended up staying in the charts for 17 weeks, so 4 months, over 4 months.
Oh, amazing. I think I've listened to you describe how you made the music video. Was it done on one day or over a weekend?
Just over one day in Tuggeranong in Canberra. My manager at the time lived there. We rounded up a few mates, went to his parents' house. They had a nice backyard and basically just did a bit of backyard cricket and a few beers and that was that, yeah.
Cheapest music video of all time, possibly.
Quite possibly. We did get a professional film crew in to shoot it, which was confusing for all of us because they wanted storyboards and we just wanted to have a party.
Yeah, right. But it came out, very good, and obviously would have helped sell more singles.
It was quite funny that there was a lot of what should we say? There was a lot of, I don't even know how to word this. The ABC weren't comfortable with showing beer products or cigarette products. And there was a lot of that in the clip. So when it was played on Rage, at the time it was number 1, it was actually chopped and cut around so that it didn't even rhyme, basically.
Oh, right. Oh, we've done an interview with Samuel C. from Singapore. He talks about how Singapore censors the comedy that he does because he has a TV show. So you're saying that the ABC basically censors comedy as well, in this case, cigarettes and beer? Pretty much.
I'm not sure if it was their decision or just the laws of the time where there was to be no cigarette advertising on television.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. But Bob Hawke can scull a beer on national TV still to this day.
Yeah,
becomes a...
But that is Bob Hawke.
Of course, he can do anything he wants, really. He's one of the few leaders of Australia that we still respect.
Yes, that's right. Speaking of censorship, I recently did the Melbourne Comedy Festival. I did a few shows with a Malaysian Muslim comedian called Rizalvan Gazel.
Yeah.
And he did a very funny set every time I heard him, and he'd finished it with the words, "Welcome to the routines I'm not allowed to do in my own country." Yeah,
that's... Well, as we've heard from Brad Oakes in another interview, comedy is a form of criticism, and some countries just don't like that criticism, do they?
Oh, that's right. I'd hate to be a comedian in North Korea.
Yeah, I imagine you get it right every night, or we never hear from you again. Yeah, no bombing on stage there, or you literally get the bomb or a hand grenade. Hold on to this.
Yeah, you'd be strapped to one of the missiles that don't work.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe that's why they don't work. They're imbalanced. Well, interesting. So you talked about, your character is a bogan, and the bogans, I grew up with the bogans through the 80s, 90s and early 2000s, obviously when your single, hit its peak. The bogan today, I think, is quite different than the bogan it was in the 80s. You're a very eloquent, well-spoken bogan. Are you a bogan Yeah, I'm using this this colloquial term in its softer sense. Are you a bogan off screen as you are on screen?
Most definitely. I would say on stage or on screen, it's slightly more amplified. But
Yep.
I'm sitting here in a pair of Kmart double plug-up longs at the moment with a pair of jeans on, and still got the mullet on.
And in terms of a comedian, if we come back to sort of the reason why a lot of people are listening to this podcast, and that is to get ideas about how to become a stand-up comedian. How early did you attach yourself to the bogan brand, or maybe even realise that this is actually working for me?
Right at the start, I would say, Maury. My first gig was at a open mic day at the Espy in St Kilda, and I was dressed as I would normally be dressed, but I had the flannelette buttoned up and tucked in I guess that's my version of my court clothes, going to court clothes. It's just the same clothes, just done up a bit neater.
Yeah.
So I learned within the first few shows that I didn't need to button up the flannel or wear shoes. I could just be myself.
So if I was to go into your house and look at your cupboard, how many flannelette shirts would I see?
You'd probably find at least 7.
Yeah. All the same colour, or are you a man of many seasons?
There's a black one and a blue one, but the rest would be red, only because I've learned over the years. I do a joke where the flannel's tied around my waist, and I talk about being in Scotland and turn the flannel around to make it look like a kilt.
Yeah, right.
I've tried that with whatever flannel I've got on. It seems to get a bigger laugh with a red flannelette. I think people just associate the colour red with kilts.
Yeah. No, I've seen you do that. You always get a good laugh. Bogan's working for you. It's working for you to this day. A quick little anthropology question, perhaps, and sociology question. Where is the bogan today in Australian culture?
That's a really difficult question. From my generation of bogan, we're still alive and well. Mm-hmm. With the mullets who like the Fords and Holdens and the Aussie pub rock.
Yep.
The younger generation today who would consider themselves bogans, unfortunately I don't consider them bogans. They're a completely different breed. But
smashed avocado breed?
Yeah, probably.
Right.
They've got the top button done up on their flannelette, let's say.
Right.
An interesting observation. I went to the AC/DC concert last time they came out here at Etihad Stadium. And it was when I was a teen going to see AC/DC, it was just all hard pub rock and bogans getting drunk and having a great time listening to rock and roll. Those same people were at that concert with their kids and grandkids. It was a family event to go to AC/DC the last time I went.
It shows their age and perhaps their frame of mind. I mean, they haven't brought out a beer, but they've come out with some nice Shiraz.
They have indeed. I've got the AC/DC wine collection at home.
Yeah, exactly.
They've just come out with a bourbon, actually.
Oh, they have? Okay. Oh, thank God for that. I thought that would have been Jimmy Barnes's thing. Or is he more of vodka?
Yeah, he's a vodka guy. I don't think Jimmy's had a drink for quite a while anyway.
No, that's true. I did see you on your social media with the new retro VB can that you got your hands on.
VB have been quite friendly to me. I think because I mentioned their product in the song. I've received quite a few. I've got the retro can, the original design of the VB. They've also sent me out... Quentin Tarantino came out to Australia the last time to promote his movie The Hateful Eight, and VB had caught wind of the fact that he said he liked coming to Australia because he liked VB. And they bashed his media conference and presented him with a 6-pack of VB cans that had Quentin Tarantino where they'd normally have Victoria Bitter written. And they were fairly exclusive, and they made 7 of those. They gave him 6 and they sent me the 7th one. So myself and Quentin are the only ones with one of those VB cans.
Oh, there you go. It's not sitting on eBay for a couple of thousand?
Not yet. I'll wait till he dies and hopefully get a house out of it.
Yeah, definitely. So interesting. So we're talking about beer, and beer is very much part of your personality, both on stage and off stage. You often have a beer in your hand when you're actually on stage. Have you ever had a cocktail?
No, I haven't. I don't think I will either. I've had pubs invent the Chris Franklin cocktail, which was basically just a VB stubby with one of those tiny little umbrellas sticking out the top.
Yeah, that would be right.
I actually get a little bit precious if someone's taking a snap and I've got a different brand of beer in my hand.
Oh, really? You're just only a VB man?
Yeah, well, there's some venues where you can't where you can't get a VB these days.
But I believe you've got a beer coldie holder, though, that actually has it's a VB, but it means very bogan.
That's correct, yeah. And on the back it says, Chris Franklin, I love drinking.
Ah, there you go. So that's a way of getting around that. I guess obviously a VB is a stubby. That's a smaller bottle for those who are not familiar with dark brown glass. So I guess you could sort of get away drinking another brand with that coldie holder.
Oh, that's right. As long as I keep my hand over the neck that's sticking out the top.
But as a comedian, and we heard from, again, Brad Oakes, he was talking about slang and words used across Australia, sometimes Sydney, Melbourne and other states and other cities being different. Coldie holder, I just mentioned it thinking that everyone would understand.
That's the first time I've heard that expression. I've always referred to them as stubby holders.
Stubby holders, yeah.
In Queensland, they're called stubby coolers.
So this is actually a good question. As a comedian, as you do travel, and you're in Sydney, you live in Tasmania, you're brought up in Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, how attuned do you have to be to the local slang, local language?
It really doesn't vary. There was a time, I've been doing comedy 20 years, and 20 years ago, you had to refer to a bogan in Sydney as a Westie. There was different names for bogan around the country. In Canberra, they were booners, I believe, and Devons in Queensland.
Right. Devons.
Yeah. So, there was different names. But I think bogan sort of took over the whole lot. Everyone knows what a bogan is around the country.
Oh, right. Kind of like AFL.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, as a comedian, so coming back to your job as a comedian, entertaining, I've seen a couple of videos of you on YouTube, and there's one in particular where you put down a heckler and you put him down nicely, and he walks away. There's no biffo. Do you get many hecklers at the shows that you do?
There's always someone that wants to be part of a show. I think you'll find every comedian will tell you that. They're maybe enjoying the show a bit too much, a little bit too excited, or just had one too many drinks. They generally mean no harm. They just want to be funny themselves and get involved in the show. And you've really got to hit the nail on the head before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
So you've got to be strong and beat them early and move on with the show.
Yeah. Do you have a particular style when dealing with a heckler?
I found everyone does it differently. Everyone has different backgrounds. I mean, there's accountants and lawyers and carpenters and all sorts of different people that are doing comedy. I grew up from a working class background, I guess, and I found all the lines pre-comedy that used to get me into fights in pubs are the ones that shut down the hecklers now that I'm doing comedy.
There you go. So you can talk from a working class stand-up comedian, but those accountant stand-up comedians, they'll have to get their advice somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, some of the lines I use can be quite aggressive. I don't generally start with the aggressive ones because that can turn the whole crowd against you. You sort of ease your way into them.
Yeah.
But there may be comedians around who might not be able to back up those statements if it goes a bit worse, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Has it gone worse for you at all? Has anyone actually accosted you?
Never at all.
No?
Never at all.
Oh, that's good.
No. The closest it's come was at the Last Laugh at the Athenaeum Theatre in Melbourne, which has no security on there, 400 people.
Oh, geez.
Unfortunately, the room's not going anymore. But, there was one time where a fella came up on stage with me and I had to sort of talk him down myself. I'm standing there thinking, do I punch him in front of 400 people or talk him down? And I went the soft way and got him back down to his seat.
Oh, the softer side of Chris Franklin. There you go. Have you bombed on stage before, maybe from a heckler or from other reasons?
Not from a heckler. I guess it was from a heckler. In the early days, as an open mic comic, I once did a show in Footscray in Melbourne's West. A funny little bar. I can't remember the name of it. There was no one in the room that had the comedy in it. There was double doors at the back of the room that led to the main bar, which was an island bar. It had two old fellas like the hecklers from the Muppets sitting at the bar, watching the horse races on the TAB. As I said, no one in the room that was doing the comedy. I was standing on basically a milk crate with a bit of wood on it, with a veranda light as a spotlight. Yeah. And I hadn't said about 3 words with one of these old guys in the other room from the bar turned around and yelled out, "Mate, would you shut up? Race 8's on."
That's great.
There's not really anywhere to go from there.
No, it's hard, isn't it? Let's go now about how you write comedy. Different comedians have different ways of generating jokes. Walking the dog, or sitting in a pub, as you may do, or sitting on a veranda in Manly. Where do you get your inspiration, and how do you format jokes?
The comedians do that very differently. Everyone has their own style. Some people will sit down and write a specific piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually put pen to paper at all. I find that because I've been private school educated, I actually write a lot better than my character speaks on stage. So I can't write how I talk, if that makes sense.
Now you're beginning to make sense. I said earlier in this interview, I said you're very eloquent, well-spoken, and you went to private school. That makes sense?
Yes, that's right. Haileybury College in Dingley there.
Is it Springvale Road?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And so you're saying that you don't write any of your jokes down, you just commit them to memory?
No, I will see something that I find amusing or think of something that I think is amusing. I'll try it out on stage, and if I can't make an audience see the comedy that I thought was in there, I'll try it 3 different times, rewording it each time to see if it's the way I've said it. If I can't get anything out of it after 3 times, I just let it go.
Yeah, right. That seems to be a rule of thumb, isn't it, for comedians? Try it 3 times. And
Well, that's my rule, I guess. Yeah, I'm not. I can't speak for other guys, but yeah, that's what I always do.
You've given us some great advice in this interview. Is there anything else that you think is valuable for a stand-up comedian wannabe, someone who's just starting out, or perhaps a bucket list ticker who's thinking, I'm going to give it a go, but I just need a little bit of advice?
A couple of bits of advice. If you believe in yourself, keep at it, even if you're not advancing as quickly as you wanted to. Just keep at it. I was very fortunate where within 6 months of starting comedy, I won the Raw National Final, and a year or so after that, the bloke single came out. So I got thrown into the spotlight very quickly. But there's people such as Dave Hughes, who is making a lot more money than me now, who was an open mic comic for 4 years and just never gave up on himself.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, if you believe in yourself, keep at it. And at gigs, I would suggest if you've got a professional headliner there or an MC, get in their ear for advice and stay to the end of the show to watch what they do and learn from observing. But I noticed when I first started coming to Sydney, the Sydney comics would do their spot and go home and not watch the headliner. And I thought, well, how are you going to learn how to headline if you don't hang around?
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
So the Melbourne scene at the time was very good, where the headliners would openly give advice to the younger guys, and the younger guys would want to stay and watch them, basically. So, and I think that's why there was a lot of good Melbourne comics coming out from around that time when I started out.
Well, Chris, you've travelled all over Australia, and as you sit right now on the balcony looking over Manly, you've travelled all over Australia doing gigs. You've travelled all over Southeast Asia, I believe, Malaysia, Singapore, is that right?
Yes, Hong Kong. Been up around those parts. I've been to quite a few places. New Zealand, obviously, which I basically consider Australia. New Guinea. Where else have I been? The Edinburgh Comedy Festival.
You've also been in war-torn areas.
I have indeed. The Defence Force asked me to go over and entertain the troops in Afghanistan. That was quite exciting. That was an eye-opener for me. I mean, I was ex-military myself, but I didn't realise how young I was in the Navy. I got over there to Afghanistan, and there was these kids, basically, my children's age, that were there putting their lives on the line for the country, and all of them asking me what I was doing there. I said, I'm just here because you're here, guys.
Yeah, right. And then you've also done Edinburgh?
That was the result of the winning the Raw final in '98. The prize for that is a trip to Edinburgh. So that's the one and only time I've gone over. I'm hoping to go over next year, which will make it a 20-year hiatus between gigs over there.
Yeah, look, you're well-travelled and you give some great advice. You'll also be one of our guest teachers at the next School of Hard Knock Knocks class in May.
I'm looking forward to that. As you know, Murray, I've done one of those courses with you before and had a great time, and it was satisfying for me to see the guys when I first saw them early in the week in that particular class, right through to their first show, and watching them perform their first stand-up gig was fantastic to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 2 in particular from that particular class that have gone on, and one, in fact, even did his own Melbourne International Comedy Festival show. That's fantastic to hear. And not only are you a teacher at the next May 21 to 25 School of Hard Knock Knocks course, but you'll also be our guest headliner on that night, on the Thursday.
Looking forward to that too, Murray. I did that last time as well, and the class with their first ever gig just seems to put the audience in just the right mood for me to get up there. So I had an absolute ball last time and really looking forward to doing it again.
The students themselves, many of them have never actually performed to a live audience before, and to have a headliner of your calibre next to them is certainly a life experience.
What I was amazed at was some of them not only hadn't performed comedy before, but for the quality of the stuff they were putting out at that graduation show, some of them hadn't even been to a live stand-up show before.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think that's testament to your coaching as well. I think we have to give a little bit of congratulations and thanks.
I played a very small part. It's yourself and Ben Horowitz that do all the hard work.
That is true. Well, aside from meeting you in person in May on the 21st, 25th, how would someone get in contact with Chris Franklin to book for an upcoming show, an event, a stand-up gig? How would they get in contact with you?
The easiest way would be to contact my management company, which is A-List Entertainment. They're based in Sydney, but they work nationwide. And their website is alist.com.au. And their phone number is 0295 600 600.
Excellent. We'll put that link and the phone number in the show notes. So if anyone missed it or for some reason doesn't know how to rewind a podcast, then you can just click on the link. My dad wouldn't know.
My mum's still trying to rewind her DVD.
That's right. Well, Chris, thank you very much. Very insightful interview for the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast. Enjoy your show. We'll have a great show tonight, Break a Leg, in Manly, and we'll see you in May.
Thanks, Maury. I'm looking forward to it.